A deserted manor stands tall in the dark shades of night, amid dense trees in an Indian village. On an eerie night, a man breaks into the yard filled with rustling leaves. He looks around, lighting his torch, only to view the scary spirit of a woman clad in a white sari. Appalled, he falls down as the spirit vanishes into the well nearby. He scurries off for his life. It is 1964, and the manor is called Bhargavi Villa. One day, a young writer named Bashier arrives in this beautiful coastal village in a rickshaw with his belongings. He stops at the Bhargavi Villa manor. The passers-by and the rickshaw drivers are equally shocked to see him walk calmly into the yard. He walks over to the well, overgrown with shrubs and vines, and looks at the water. He picks up a stone and throws it into the depths of the well. He greets the manor, covered in dust and cobwebs, as Bhargavi Villa. He finds one of the rooms mysteriously locked and cannot be opened. He chooses to settle down in another room upstairs. The rickshaw drivers leave their things at the gate and leave promptly. He cleans and tidies the room all by himself. Later, he goes out and updates the local postman with his new address. The postman is shocked to know that he has moved into the haunted Bhargavi Villa. Bashier goes to the nearby eatery for tea and pays in advance to have food delivered to him every day. But when he mentions he lives at the Bhargavi Villa, everyone there is horrified. The cafe manager excuses that the food cannot be delivered, and Bashier agrees to dine in. Later, Bashier goes to visit his friends, but is intimidated by a scary thug at their place. Immediately, his friends come in explaining that the thug is one of their uncles who have been installed to scare off their pestering landlord. The friends are amazed to see Bashier and reunite after a long time. As they sip tea and share smokes, Bashier elatedly tells them about having found a big enough house and that they all could live there. When his friends realize that Bashier is living in the Bhargavi Villa, they are horrified too. They tell him that a gorgeous woman named Bhargavi used to live there. She was a good singer and a dancer too. Her family arranged her marriage with her cousin, Minnesota Nair, according to the South Indian custom. But she was in love with another musician named Shashikumar who lived right next to the Bhargavi Villa. Unfortunately, Shashikumar fled after some time, and heartbroken, she committed suicide by jumping into the well. She left a note explaining that Shashikumar had married someone else, and she had no more reason to be alive. Now, her ghastly spirit haunts the house and its residents, especially men. Bashier leaves his friends to return to the Bhargavi Villa. They are hesitant about his safety, but he is determined. He walks to Bhargavi Villa and closes the creaky gate. He lights his torch into the well and addresses the invisible spirit affectionately as Dear Bhargavi. He also introduces himself as a lone and humble writer and apologizes for throwing the stone in the morning. He seeks her permission to stay at the house peacefully, as he has already paid the rent in advance and has nowhere else to go. He hears scary sounds, but it turns out to be dogs and rodents. He enters after asking her permission again. Once in his room, he plays Hindustani classic songs and goes to the well to fetch some water. He talks to the imaginary Bhargavi again and asks her why she herself when she could have had many loyal lovers. Little does he know that the spirit is sitting on the other side of the well listening to him. Scary scorpions and snakes lurk around the house secretly. In the yellow shade of his lamp, Bashier sits down at night to write about his recently lost love, but he is unable to. He goes to sleep after lowering the flame of the lamp. He wishes Bhargavi good night. In the middle of the night, the flame of the lamp turns on its own and his journal opens and the pages flutter. Then the light turns off as if someone has finished reading Bashir's writings. The next morning, he wakes up well rested. He wishes Bhargavi a good morning. When he goes for tea at the local eatery, everyone is stunned to see him all right. The manager asks him how his night was, and Bashier replies that it went well. Meanwhile, back at Bhargavi Villa, the music is turned on its own and the chair moves. The manager tells Bashier that a while ago, Minnesota's sister and husband had tried to stay at the house for a night, but they had to run for their lives because of the troubles unleashed by Bhargavi's spirit. He repeats the same story of how she committed self-destruction because of her family pressuring her to marry MN and her lover Shashikumar fleeing. The manager adds that MN is a local wealthy guy who thinks that Bhargavi is a wicked woman, lifeless or alive. Bashier thinks of writing her story, but has to figure out more. The manager warns him that Bhargavi Villa is cursed and Bashier should be careful. Meanwhile, Bashir's friends are worried that he might not have survived the night at the haunted house and goes to check on him. They talk about how Bashier has lost his senses after the recent heartbreak, but Bashier surprises them on the way. He clarifies that everything is well at the house and nothing remotely paranormal happened. His friends still cannot believe it. Back at Bhargavi Villa, Bashier addresses the invisible spirit of Bhargavi and talks to her about writing her true story and not the false rumors. He begins to pen the story of Bhargavi and Shashikumar, who live in two houses separated by just a wall. But he is disturbed by the noise coming from Bhargavi's old room. He goes to check and sees its window opened and a stick wedged on an old wooden box. He opens the room thick with dust and cobwebs. The wooden box is locked. He reads the graffiti of poetry written by Bhargavi about wanting to sleep forever in the memory of her love. A sitter, labeled SK, alluding to Shashikumar, sits on the side. He finds the key and opens the box. It has a portrait of her. He finishes cleaning up the house and then goes to the beach. At night, when Bashier is fast asleep, a passerby arrives at the front. He is scared by the momentary sight of Bhargavi's spirit when a lightning flashes. Bashier hears the man scream and gets out to check. He sees the man shuddering on the ground as if being choked by someone. Bashier takes him inside and gives him water to calm down. Once resuscitated, the man reveals he is a passerby in search of a job, and he shares how embarrassing it is that Bashir's wife tried to strangle him. He has assumed that the spirit of Bhargavi was actually Bashir's wife. Bashier is bewildered at first, but then plays along that his wife must have thought he is a thief. The man's name is Parakani Jr. His father, Parakani Sr., was a reputed wrestler and muscle man. Once Parakani sleeps, Bashier asks the invisible spirit of Bhargavi to let Parakani stay, as he could help to clean the yard and the well. The next day, Parakani cleans the surroundings, but also gets frightened by some monster. Bashier checks around to see such sinister figures, but cannot find any. He consoles Parakani. At night, Bashier goes off to buy dinner and Parakani is setting up the iron box. A black cat comes in and scorns him. He calls out to Bhargavi ma'am to take the cat away. He hears her playing the sitar and enjoys it. The next day, Bashier is planting some new roses and sends Parakani to his friends with the latest issue of their favorite magazine. The friends are playing cards and drinking on the balcony, and they hear the commotion of Parakani getting attacked by the scary and lunatic uncle. Parakani shows the letter from Bashier asking to borrow some rope to repair the well. Bashier prepares the rope and a wooden stand to get inside the well to clean it. Parakani is afraid of getting inside the well, so Bashier himself gets in. The reckless Parakani sneezes and drops the rope and Bashier falls into the well. He calls out for Bhargavi ma'am to help but cannot see her come out. Helplessly, he runs to Bashir's friend's house and informs them about the tragedy. His friends are worried that the cursed house has taken Bashir's life. Parakani adds that Bashir's wife, Bhargavi ma'am, didn't come out to help. The friends are shocked to hear about Bhargavi and tell him that she is a ghastly spirit, not an alive woman, and that Bashier is unmarried. Parakani is horrified to know this truth and faints. When he wakes up to water being sprayed on him, he is even more dumbfounded to see Bashier sitting in front of him. Bashier assures him that he is alive and well. He explains that he fell deep down into the well, but was raised back up somehow. All he remembers is clutching on the rope and then getting out of the well. Parakani is now scared to return to Bhargavi Villa with him and chooses to live at the friend's place. Back at the haunted house, Bashier talks to Bhargavi about how it is just them again. He tries to write again about the pain of solitude. He contemplates on life, romance, and wanders around immersed in thoughts. On a stormy night, he spots a woman standing on the sea from the beach. He is stunned and goes home to view Bhargavi's belongings. He identifies Bhargavi from the photo as the woman whom he saw at the beach. As he looks at her gorgeous portrait, he hears a woman singing about her broken dreams. He sees Bhargavi swinging amid the wild trees, with the wind in her hair, singing a melancholic melody. He walks toward her, but she has disappeared from the swing. Then he hears her again, but cannot reach her. She is singing about her long-lost lover. In his room, the papers he had written burn in patches. Bashier finds that she has actually edited the story, removing the incorrect passages. She has also left a newspaper clipping which has the news of a young man's unidentified body being found in the train many years ago. All the man had was a lock of a woman's hair kept safely in his pocket. The police suspected it was a self due to love failure. Bashier realizes this could be about Shashikumar. He also finds a letter addressed to Bhargavi, written by MN. It contains a threat that she would face grave consequences if she refuses to love him back or marries someone else. Bashier asks his friends more about this. They inform him that MN, Bhargavi's cousin who wanted to marry her, is not only rich, but also an ominous guy obsessed with black magic and violence. They also reveal that Bhargavi used to have two best friends, Suma and Latha. Bashier visits them next, and they show him the photo of Bhargavi and Shashikumar. But Latha has scratched out Shashikumar's face because she believes he broke Bhargavi's heart and life. Yet, Bhargavi's mother remembers Shashikumar as a nice gentleman. Her house help Kuthar of Adam Papu, has stories to tell but refuses to enter Bhargavi villa. Bashier also finds Bhargavi's and Shashikumar's initials carved on the beachside tree. Bashier also learns that Bhargavi's mortality note was suspiciously found on the well 2 days after her death. Moreover, Minnesota took that note and never returned it. The man is notorious for his violence and doesn't even spare cats. Bashier contemplates about the reality of Bhargavi's story. At night, he caresses the old pressed rose flower he finds in Bhargavi's box. He spots someone trying to sneak around and checks outside. Meanwhile, someone tries to arson the house and throws a knife at him. Bashier takes the knife to the tea shop manager the next day, but he is not able to identify it, and instead inquires about the update on Bhargavi's story. Bashier informs him that the story is almost over, and that her demise was definitely caused by self. Min sits in the inner room of the eatery and overhears this. At night, Bashier is unable to write anymore as the kerosene oil in the lamp finishes. He tells the invisible spirit of Bhargavi that he would fetch some and return, and read the story once it is finished. He goes to his friends for the oil. They invite him for playing cards, but he insists on returning as he needs to finish the story. They are excited to read the story, and he informs them that they can read it in the newspaper once he publishes it. When Bashier reaches back home, he is astounded to see the house lit in blue radiance coming from his room. He walks into his room and sees the room glowing in shimmers of blue flame from the lamp. He thanks Bhargavi for the blue light and finishes writing the story. He sits out next to the well and begins reading the story. On a moonlit night, Shashikumar is playing the sitar at his veranda and Bhargavi dances to its rhythm in her room. The next day, she visits Shashikumar with her friends Suma and Latha for his help for their college annual day. She wants him to compose the dance and the music for her performance. He agrees. Bhargavi and Shashikumar have unsaid feelings for each other and are shy to express the same. On the annual day, Bhargavi goes to college accompanied by her cousin Mn. Their Shashikumar waits for her. The dance goes well and is widely applauded. Afterwards, Minnesota scares Bashir's friends, who are then college classmates of Bhargavi, for looking at her desirously. Bhargavi leaves college with Shashikumar and her friends. Mn was left out. Shashikumar is invited for dinner at Bhargavi Villa and waits at the table. Bhargavi comes in with the plates looking pretty as ever, but she falls down and Shashikumar rushes to rescue. He kisses on her bruised finger, and they have an awkward but romantic moment. They have dinner together, and her friends leave, followed by Shashikumar. Before he leaves, he exchanges glances of love with Bhargavi. At night, she walks towards the wall. Shashikumar lives on the other side of it. He queries about the wound on her finger, and she says only the pain in her heart remains. He describes his love for her in the most beautiful ways. Their romance ensues with stolen glances, brief conversations in the library, and at night on either side of the wall. They leave love letters on the wall for each other. She sends him plantain bananas via her house help Mr. Katharavatam Papu. They meet at the beach too. One day, Minnesota sees a love letter kept on the wall. Meanwhile, Bhargavi, being so deeply in love with Shashikumar, stops wearing colors and sticks to white outfits just like him. One day, Minnesota visits Shashikumar and introduces himself as her cousin. At this moment, Katharavatam Papu also drops in with a package of fruits from Bhargavi for Shashikumar, and then snatches the package much to Papu's fear and examines it, but eventually hands it over to Shashikumar. Mn invites him to move to his house, as he has many vacant rooms, but Shashikumar politely refuses. Mn leaves soon for Bhargavi's. Bhargavi comes home from college to see Mn bragging about guns to her mother. She ignores him. He tells Bhargavi's mom that he has decided to get married, and she asks the whereabouts of the bride. He reveals that Bhargavi shall be the bride, much to their shock. Bhargavi's mom tries to discourage him, but he persists. She then states that it should be discussed with Bhargavi. Mn asks Papu, who is an aspiring playwright, to narrate one of his plays. Enthusiastically, Papu acts out the play, which has the story of a heroine eloping with the villain. Mn gets irritated by the story and slaps Papu. Bhargavi intervenes and scolds Mn. He gets enraged and asks her to talk more humbly, given that she is going to be his wife. She sternly expresses her disinterest in the marriage, and he is infuriated. The mother breaks off this scuffle. Later, she meets Shashikumar at the beach and tells him about having rejected a relative's proposal. They are glad that her mother has decided to get her married only after graduation. He has written a speech for her college elocution competition. Meanwhile, Minnesota leaves a letter for Bhargavi threatening to concede to the marital proposal or face danger. She is worried. Shashikumar returns from some political protests and is advised by his friends to be careful about the police. On his way home, someone tries to shoot him, and he makes a narrow escape. He plans to escape to Lucknow and asks Bhargavi to wait for 6 months. She insists on joining him, but he himself does not know how he would stay or work in Lucknow. She bids a sad farewell. At the railway station, Minnesota comes up to him and joins him on the journey, explaining that he is going to Delhi for a job interview. He also hands over a package saying it's from Bhargavi. It does look like how Bhargavi usually wraps and signs her gifts for Shashikumar. In the train, Shashikumar starts to cough and choke and begs for some water from MN. The gift was actually from MN and had poisoned bananas which Shashikumar ate. MN laughs sinisterly and tells him that water won't do anything now. He makes him lie down and leaves the train, collecting all their luggage and IDs. Back at home, Bhargavi waits for Shashikumar's letters and is saddened about getting no update. MN tries to persuade her to marry him in vain. One night, Minnesota comes to her and reveals that he killed Shashikumar by poisoning the bananas which he lied to have been sent by her. She is heartbroken and falls into grief. Bhargavi slaps him hard when he tries to propose again. He is infuriated and pushes her into the well. She drowns and dies. Bashier asks Bhargavi whether the story is right, and it is MN who has been hiding near the well so far, who confirms. He wonders how Bashier figured out the truth. Bashier reveals that he deducted everything from people's statements. MN points out that there are some errors though. Bashier offers to correct them, but MN threatens to eliminate him, throw him into the well, and then fill it up with sand. Bashier asks him to take the story with him if he wants, but MN makes it clear that he wants the writer himself, not just the writing. Enraged, he rants like a psycho about being painted as the villain when he should be the hero who even dared to murder to secure his love. He adds that he choked Shashikumar to his demise when the poison didn't incapacitate him completely. He attacks Bashier with a knife and Bashier also pulls out a knife. A fierce knife fight ensues, and it begins to rain too. One tries to slay Bashier by pushing him into the well. The spirit of Bhargavi is watching it all from the window. At the final crucial moment, it is MN who falls into the well, not Bashier. He drowns just like Bhargavi. Her dreadful white sari rises from the well and pulls him down to death. Bashier sees the papers of his story rising up from the well and falling nearby. He wishes Bhargavi eternal peace in the company of Shashikumar and returns to his solitude.